So, puzzle game design. One of the things that it's very interesting about puzzle game design is that because of the nature and the history of puzzle games, we have a conception on how they work that is not necessarily what is successful on mobile games or in mass market games. And we usually see in the market a lot of games, puzzle games, that come out in the app stores, and they usually get a high peak. The genre is popular because puzzle games are really popular among the players who are playing mobile games. But interestingly enough, then they drop off way faster than other type of games. And a lot of people claim that it might be because people get bored with these games. And I have a different theory. And the theory comes from how we consider the design of puzzle games. So there's a really great YouTube channel called Game Maker's Toolkit. How many people know this channel? Good, good. That's a decent number. But everybody else should actually check it out. Because Mark Brown does a very good job explaining a lot of game design intricacies. However, he's wrong in how he describes puzzle games. And so first we're going to see how he describes puzzle games.
Every puzzle game starts with its mechanics, a set of ironclad rules that govern how the game works. So in a game like Cosmic Express, you can draw train tracks on a grid, but you can't cross over the tracks. One alien can jump into each train car and then hop out into the first box of the same color they pass by.
So what's interesting about this, and the rest of the video shows games such as the Talos Principle, for example. He goes on and on about this tenet of you have a challenge ahead of you, and there is one way of solving it, and it's up to the player to figure out how to actually put the pieces together and move on and solve it. The problem with this is that these are not mass market puzzle games. Why? Well, there's multiple reasons, and we're going to go over why. But the first one is that there's only one solution, and that's a huge, huge problem. Why? Because besides the obvious fact that there's only one way to solve them, is that the player has to backtrack their actions every time they make a mistake and they're feeling dumb. And if you're a casual game designer or a mobile game designer, you know that this is the first main issue that you should never do in a mobile game, right? So the whole concept of how you design puzzle games is wrong from that perspective, right? And because at the end of the day, if the player gives, the player will give up. The mobile player will give up because at the end of the day, they stop thinking, they start trying this way versus this way. There's no strategic decisions. There's no reward because it's always punishment, right? So let's review what a mass market puzzle game actually does, right? So we're going to look at puzzle games that actually stay in the market for longer than just a couple of weeks. And we're going to start with the obvious one. So we have a screenshot of Candy Crush Saga, and this is at the screen right now. And there's different possibilities, right? There's not only one solution. There's not only one action that the player can do. Right now, there are different ones. Which one do you think the player should do? Can somebody call on it? What's up? Green, exactly, right? The green is the best option right now in terms of points, right? Because it's going to give you a bomb. However, I can start with the blue. And if I do the blue, I still score points. I still have the green to do it next. So the great thing about match 3 game design is that there are multiple ways of achieving a solution. You're not punishing the player because they didn't see the green. Some of you maybe didn't see the green. You still didn't lose. You have a number of moves before you actually lose the game. So it's a more relaxed activity. It's a more, there's more possibilities for me to actually achieve the goal of the game. And it's still a puzzle, it's still strategic, and we're going to see why. Let's look at another example. Let's look at Toy Blast. So in Toy Blast, in the upper left, I have my objective, right? Those are the number of pieces that I need to match in order to solve the level. In this example, I have 23 purple and 19 yellow that I still need to go. So there's different ways, different things I can do right now, right? Right? What can I do? What's that? Purple, right? Exactly. And there's different types of purple groups that I can select, right? So the first one will be that one over there. But also, I can select the reds first in order to get a bigger purple, right? That was a strategic decision. I gave the player the possibility of not only achieving the solution in different ways, but also I gave them a framework for them to think another action that ultimately gives them a bigger reward. And that's super, super key. You don't punish the player along the way, but also you allow them to make interesting decisions. And that's key in the framework of your puzzle game. Let's look at another thing. Back to Candy Crush. What happened here? Because of a move that I did, it triggered a series of cascade effects. And the game told me that what I did is divine. Okay? So every human being has something called a reward system. And the reward system is fed by a chemical component called dopamine. Every time Candy Crush tells you that what you did is divine, your body generates dopamine, which enters into your reward system and makes you feel good. The other things that make you feel good besides that are sex and food. Okay? And this is why Candy Crush goes so well. Right? So you need to make sure that every time you are giving the player an opportunity to feel awesome, make sure they know that they're awesome. Compare that to Marx Brown examples of puzzle games, right? Oh, you have to do this level 37 times before I tell you that you passed it. See the contrast? And in game design, we use this tenet as a tenet of good puzzle game design, where it's the absolute opposite of what we should be doing. So, we're looking at games that generally have bigger teams, and if you've seen me talking Helsinki, based on the number of things that I'm doing right now, on the number of talks that I'm doing right now, I try to always bring examples of games that are being made by small teams, because I also am a small team, so we're going to look at the game. How many people are familiar with this game, by the way? Okay. This was my favorite puzzle game of 2018. If you know Merged Dragons, for example, which is in the top grossing chart, Merged Dragon is a successor of Monster Merge. So what is Monster Merge about? Monster Merge is a game where you have a grid, and every so often these monsters pop up. And if you have two monsters of the same kind, you can join them together in order to create a higher level monster. And your goal is to position them around wells in order to make money. So it's a combination of puzzle and idle at the same time. It was very innovative when it came out, and I thought it was fantastic. And as you continue merging, you are able to create monsters of a higher caliber. And at a certain point, when you are creating a monster of a higher level for the first time, you achieve a new level in the game. So you have a clear representation of progress. So what are the components that make this game so fun? One is you see the play. Again, going back to puzzle game design. In mass market puzzle games, we always allow the player to have a vision of what the possibilities are. We don't obfuscate information. We don't obfuscate the gameplay elements. We actually show everything to you, and it's up to you to figure out how to put them together. And another thing that is also super important is, and going back to match 3 for a sec, there's always one chance. It's very rare that you get that level in match 3 where there are no matches available, right? It's actually a balance fail, usually, when that happens. So in 99.999% of the cases, you do have one match that you can actually do. And that's part of the balancing. And that allows the player to say, well, there's no possibility for me to progress. However, I can do this match hoping that the next move is something that I can make some progress. And that's also an opportunity for the player to redeem themselves, right? There's no until the last move, there's always a possibility of actually win. The other thing that's also very important is strategy. In this particular set of screenshots on the left, I have multiple opportunities, right? I can match this one with this one, this one with this one, right? This one with this one, right? I can make this choice. In the same way as we were looking at the match 3 level, and there were 3 or 4 different match possibilities, right? We always need to be able to provide the player as much as we can for different opportunities. So they don't have to think too hard. They don't have to look an entire grid until they find that one match available. Well, you can balance the game to be challenging, but at the same time, allow the player to have multiple opportunities to achieve the progress. The last element is progression. You can see in this shot, in this video, how the player is going to generate a chain of matches that will allow them to reach a monster of a higher level. And when you reach that higher level, when you complete, there's the reward. And the reward generates dopamine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's very important. And it's very important that it's happening in several iterations throughout the course of the game. So a clear representation of progress that the player can visibly see what is their next goal at all times. In conclusion, let's go over each of the points that I made. Great mass market puzzle games have multiple ways to achieve a solution. They don't punish you along the way. They allow you to make mistakes and recover yourself, and in many cases you are able to recover yourself. You don't have to make perfect moves across the entire level. They reward you often. They constantly remind you of how awesome you are when you do something awesome, right? When you do something well, right? And it's important. And it's important that you don't abuse it at the same time. They allow the player to see the play. They don't obfuscate information, ever. You always provide the player with the options and they're in their faces. And they allow the player to strategize, to really come up with a strategy of seeing 1, 2, or 3 moves ahead of them. And this is also a very important component. If you can design a framework where the player can actually plan 1, 2, 3 moves ahead of what the move that they're going to do next, you have a great game, because it allows the player to feel really rewarded if those 3 moves are executed successfully. And there are multiple board games that do this really well. But match 3 and group matching is a great example of doing that extremely well. And lastly, have a clear representation of progress. Progress needs to be defined visually on your UX. And it needs to be available at all times for the player to see where are they at compared to the last move and where they could be in the next move. So you should never obfuscate the chances of the player to be successful or not. And that's all I have for you guys. But we have plenty of time, and I would love to answer any questions or actually have an open conversation about this, because it's a controversial topic in many ways, especially among independent game designers. Another thing is I'm a very approachable person. If you see me, if you're not comfortable talking in public with a big group of people and like to talk, and you see me outside at the show, feel free to approach me and come and talk to me. I always love to talk to other fellow developers about game design.